Sometimes the people who promise to protect us are the very ones who watch us fall and say nothing. It's easy to believe betrayal comes with warning signs, loud arguments, or sudden distance, but often it arrives quietly, smiling, toasting, and holding your hand. Imagine celebrating your birthday, 8 months pregnant with your husband by your side, when suddenly his mistress appears, hurls cake in your face, and everyone, including your husband's friends, laughs at your humiliation. But they wouldn't be laughing for long. Before we begin, if you appreciate these real-life accounts of courage in the face of adversity, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. When Jenna discovered she was pregnant after years of trying, it felt like the final piece of her carefully constructed life was falling into place. Though the pregnancy hadn't been easy, with severe morning sickness through the first trimester and gestational diabetes in the second, Jenna approached motherhood with the same determined optimism she brought to everything else. There were days when the fatigue brought her to tears, but she pushed through, reminding herself that the fight was worth it. This baby was everything. By the time her 35th birthday approached, Jenna was 8 months pregnant. Her sister, Lena, insisted on throwing her a celebration at Giovanni's, an upscale Italian restaurant with a private dining room. Despite Jenna's protests that she was too exhausted for a party, Lena was adamant. "You deserve to be celebrated," Lena told her. "Especially now. Let people show you how much they care." Jenna had hesitated. Lately, she'd felt a strange tension in Ethan, a distracted silence that settled over him like a second skin. But she told herself it was just the stress of impending parenthood. Jenna relented, touched by her sister's insistence. The evening of the party arrived. Jenna wore a navy blue maternity dress. She'd splurged on one that made her feel beautiful despite the discomfort of late pregnancy. Ethan had been acting distant lately, blaming work stress, but that evening he seemed attentive, helping her into the car and holding her hand as they walked into the restaurant. His smile was warm, but his grip felt colder than usual, almost rehearsed. The private dining room at Giovanni's had been transformed with silver and gold decorations, a "Happy Birthday Jenna" banner hanging across one wall. About 30 guests mingled around high-top tables, colleagues, neighborhood friends, family members, and several of Ethan's friends from his firm, a boisterous group that had always made Jenna slightly uncomfortable with their perpetual boys' club mentality. They laughed loud, drank fast, and shared inside jokes Jenna was never part of. Tonight, they seemed even more tightly bonded, whispering between glances in her direction. By all appearances, it was the perfect celebration. Lena had arranged for a 3-tier cake, decorated with fondant flowers that matched the nursery theme Jenna had chosen for the baby. As the night progressed, Ethan clinked his glass to gather everyone's attention. "I'd like to make a toast," he announced, his voice carrying across the room as conversations quieted. "To my beautiful wife." On her special day, Jenna stood beside him, blushing as the attention turned to her. Ethan continued, "Jenna, you're glowing, darling. I'm the luckiest man alive to have you as my wife and soon the mother of our child." His words were sweet, almost too perfect, like lines from a well-rehearsed speech. Jenna smiled, but something in her chest fluttered, and not from the baby. The gathered friends and family raised their glasses in unison to Jenna. What no one knew, what Jenna herself couldn't have imagined, was that Ethan's words were a masterpiece of deception. As he spoke of luck and love, he was hiding a secret that was about to explode into the open in the most devastating way possible. Lena handed Jenna the cake knife, a silver-plated heirloom that had belonged to their grandmother. Ethan placed his hand over Jenna's as they positioned the knife over the top tier, a picture-perfect moment that Lena captured on her phone. Jenna smiled, feeling a flutter of movement from the baby, as if her unborn child was participating in the celebration. That's when the private dining room door swung open. The woman who entered was a stranger to Jenna. She was younger, perhaps 28, with glossy dark hair that fell past her shoulders and a fitted red dress that emphasized her slim figure. Everything about her radiated confidence as she surveyed the room with cool detachment. The conversation died immediately in the sudden silence. The woman's high heels clicked sharply against the hardwood floor as she walked toward the center of the room. Jenna noticed Ethan's hand go rigid over hers. When she glanced at him, his face had drained of color. "Don't let me interrupt your family moment," the woman said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Jenna looked from the stranger to her husband, confusion clouding her features. "Ethan, who is this?" Before Ethan could answer, the woman continued her approach until she stood directly across the cake table from them. "I'm Vanessa," she said to Jenna, though her eyes remained fixed on Ethan. "Ask your husband who I am." Ethan stepped forward, positioning himself between the two women. "This isn't the place," he said quietly to Vanessa. "Please leave." Vanessa laughed, a harsh sound, devoid of humor. "Not the place? Is that what you said when you were in my bed last night? This isn't the place?" The room collectively gasped. Jenna's hand instinctively moved to her stomach, a protective gesture for her unborn child. "Ethan," Jenna's voice trembled. "What is she talking about?" Ethan remained frozen, offering no defense, no denial. His silence was confirmation enough. Vanessa's eyes finally shifted to Jenna, taking in her pregnant belly with obvious disdain. "He's been promising to leave you for 6 months, even after he found out about the baby," she said, her lip curling in disgust. "He said it wasn't." Jenna felt as though the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. 6 months. Their child had been conceived 8 months ago, which meant Ethan had started his affair shortly after learning he was going to be a father. The timeline clicked into place like a cruel joke. Each memory of his distant behavior suddenly recontextualized. The morning sickness, the late-night cravings, the nursery plans, and all the while, he had been elsewhere, with her. "Is this true?" Jenna asked, though she already knew the answer from Ethan's stricken expression. His silence screamed louder than words. Vanessa didn't wait for Ethan's response. In one swift motion, she reached forward, grabbed the top tier of the cake, and hurled it directly at Jenna. The cake hit Jenna square in the chest. There was a sickening splat, followed by the collective intake of breath from the room. Frosting splattered across her face, hair, and the navy blue dress she'd so carefully chosen. Pieces of cake slid down her pregnant belly, leaving trails of buttercream in their wake. It dripped slowly, like time itself had fractured, sweetened shards of humiliation sliding down her body in front of everyone she knew. "Now you look as pathetic as you actually are," Vanessa spat. Her voice, laced with venom, echoed in the stunned silence. For 3 excruciating seconds, the room was utterly silent. Jenna stood motionless, cake dripping from her hair and eyelashes. The utter humiliation of the moment surpassing even the shock of learning about her husband's betrayal. It wasn't just the betrayal that shattered her. It was the public spectacle of it, the cruel theater unfolding around her swollen belly. Then, from the corner table where one of Ethan's work friends sat, a snicker broke the silence. The snicker turned into a chuckle, which gave permission for others to join in. Within moments, several guests were laughing. Some from genuine amusement, others from the uncomfortable tension of the situation. The laughter didn't just sting, it cracked something inside her, a cruel reminder of just how alone she truly was in that room. Jenna looked around the room through cake-smeared eyes, taking in the laughing faces. Then she turned to Ethan, silently pleading for him to do something, say something, defend her. Her gaze begged for a shred of dignity, for the man who had once promised to protect her to do anything. But Ethan remained paralyzed between his wife and his mistress, saying nothing, doing nothing. His cowardice stood taller than any excuse he could ever offer. Only Lena rushed to her sister's aid, grabbing napkins from a nearby table and hurrying to Jenna's side while glaring at the laughing guests. "What is wrong with all of you?" Lena shouted, her voice cutting through the laughter. Her fury vibrated through the room, trembling with loyalty and disgust. The events that followed would occur in a terrible cascade, each moment more shocking than the last. As Lena attempted to wipe cake from her sister's face, Jenna suddenly gasped, doubling over in pain. "Something's wrong," she whispered, clutching her stomach. "The baby." The laughter died instantly. What had moments ago been mockery twisted into dread. Jenna's face contorted in pain as a dark stain appeared on her dress beneath the cake smears. Her water had broken, nearly a month before her due date. "Call an ambulance," Lena screamed, supporting her sister as Jenna's knees buckled. Guests scrambled for phones. Ethan finally moved toward his wife. "Honey, I'm so sorry," he began. Jenna's eyes flashed with a fury that stopped him mid-sentence. "Don't touch me," she hissed through gritted teeth. By the door, Vanessa's expression had shifted from vindictive satisfaction to horror as she watched the medical emergency unfold, a consequence she clearly hadn't anticipated. Without another word, she backed out of the room and disappeared. Within minutes, paramedics arrived and rushed Jenna to St. Thomas Medical Center. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, she locked eyes with Lena. "Don't leave me," she whispered. "I won't," Lena promised, clutching her sister's hand. "Not ever." At the hospital, doctors immediately recognized the seriousness of the situation. Jenna was experiencing preterm labor, complicated by signs of placental abruption, a dangerous condition where the placenta detaches from the uterine wall before delivery. The emotional and physical stress of the public humiliation had likely triggered the complication. In the waiting room, an excruciating drama played out among the family members who had followed the ambulance. Ethan paced anxiously, his once handsome face now haggard with worry and guilt. Jenna's parents sat huddled together, her mother crying quietly while her father stared stonily ahead, refusing to acknowledge his son-in-law's presence. Lena stood apart from them all, furiously typing on her phone. When Ethan approached her, she looked up with such venom that he physically recoiled. "What are you doing?" he asked, nodding at her phone. Lena turned the screen toward him. On it was a video playing, footage she had been recording during the birthday toast and cake cutting. The video clearly showed Vanessa's entrance, her accusations, the cake throwing, and most damning of all, the laughter that followed, and Ethan's complete failure to defend his pregnant wife. "I was recording what I thought would be a sweet birthday memory," Lena said, her voice low and dangerous. "Instead, I captured exactly who you are, who your friends are, who that woman is." Ethan's face paled further. "Lena, please. I've already sent it to Jenna's lawyer," Lena cut him off. "And if anything happens to my sister or that baby, I'm sending it to every person you know." Before Ethan could respond, a doctor entered the waiting room. Everyone turned toward him, the family conflict momentarily suspended by collective concern for Jenna and her unborn child. "The stress has caused complications," the doctor explained soberly. "We're doing everything we can, but both mother and baby are in distress. We're preparing for an emergency C-section." Jenna's mother sobbed audibly. Her father finally spoke, addressing Ethan directly for the first time. "If anything happens to them, you'll answer to me." His voice trembled not with weakness, but with the tightly coiled rage of a man holding back years of disappointment, now concentrated into one terrifying moment. As the doctor left to return to Jenna, Lena turned to Ethan one final time. "This is on you," she said. "All of it." There was no yelling, no dramatics, just a calm, lethal certainty in her voice. Behind the swinging doors of the operating room, Jenna lay conscious but sedated on the surgical table as doctors worked urgently to deliver her baby. The bright lights overhead seemed to pulse in rhythm with the pain radiating through her body. She could feel the cold of the steel beneath her, the tight grip of the IVs in her arms, and a gnawing fear that clawed at the edges of her consciousness. "Blood pressure's dropping," a nurse called out. "We need to move faster." The lead surgeon responded. "Baby's showing signs of distress." The words cut through the air like scalpels, sharp and irreversible. Through the haze of medication and pain, Jenna could hear the urgency in their voices. A part of her registered that she should be terrified, but instead she felt strangely detached, as if watching events unfold from a distance. The humiliation of the birthday party seemed like a distant nightmare compared to the very real possibility of losing her child. She didn't care about the cake anymore, or the whispers, or the laughter. Just that heartbeat, her baby's, and whether it would keep beating. "Stay with us, Jenna," the anesthesiologist encouraged, noticing her fading awareness. "Your baby needs you to be strong right now." Those words pierced through Jenna's mental fog. "My baby needs me." The thought became her anchor as the medical team worked to save them both. She clenched onto it like a lifeline as monitors beeped and machines hummed, her body numb, but her spirit screaming. In the waiting room, the tension had become unbearable. 2 hours had passed with no update. Each tick of the clock felt like a lifetime in limbo. Ethan sat alone in a corner, repeatedly calling Vanessa, who wasn't answering, while Jenna's family huddled together on the opposite side of the room. He had never looked smaller. The suit that once fit him like armor now sagged with shame. Lena had stepped out briefly to speak with Jenna's closest friend, Monica, who had just arrived at the hospital after hearing the news. "Is it true?" Monica asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Ethan's been cheating?" Lena nodded grimly. "For months, apparently, and the woman actually threw cake at Jenna while she's 8 months pregnant." Monica's jaw clenched, her hands balled into fists. "I recorded everything," Lena confirmed, showing Monica a clip from the video. His work friends were laughing. Ethan just stood there like a statue. She didn't have to add what everyone was thinking. He let it happen. Monica watched the video, hand over her mouth. "This is monstrous," she whispered. "How's Jenna holding up?" Lena's composure finally cracked. "We don't know. They're doing an emergency C-section. There's some kind of complication with the placenta." Her voice broke mid-sentence, and her shoulders shook under the weight of too many held-in tears. Monica pulled Lena into a fierce hug. "Jenna is the strongest person I know," she said firmly. "She'll get through this." But even as she said it, her eyes flicked toward the closed operating room doors, willing them to open. As they embraced, a surgeon in blue scrubs entered the waiting room. Everyone immediately fell silent, turning toward him with expressions ranging from hope to dread. The surgeon's face gave nothing away as he pulled down his mask. "The baby has been delivered," he announced. "A girl. 5 pounds, 3 ounces. A collective exhale filled the room. Ethan stood up. "And Jenna?" he asked. The surgeon's expression tightened slightly. "Your wife experienced significant hemorrhaging during the procedure. We've stabilized her, but she's lost a lot of blood and remains in critical condition. The next 24 hours will be crucial." Jenna's mother collapsed against her husband, who addressed the surgeon. "The baby, is she okay?" "She's premature and experiencing some respiratory difficulties, which is common at 34 weeks. She's been taken to the NICU for oxygen support and monitoring." "Can we see them?" Lena asked. "The baby, yes, though only 2 visitors in the NICU at a time. Jenna is in recovery and heavily sedated. 1 person can sit with her once she's moved to intensive care, which should be within the hour." As the surgeon left, Jenna's parents immediately declared their intention to see their granddaughter. Ethan moved to follow them, but Jenna's father blocked his path. "You've done enough," he said coldly. "Stay away from my daughter and granddaughter." Ethan, still in shock from the evening's events, didn't argue. He sank back into his chair. As Jenna's parents followed a nurse toward the NICU, Lena approached Ethan, her earlier fury now tempered by exhaustion. "Why?" she asked simply. "Why would you do this to her?" Ethan stared at the floor, unable to meet her gaze. "I never meant for any of this to happen." "That's not an answer," Lena pressed. "Jenna has been nothing but loving and supportive. She was so excited about the baby." "Your baby," she added, her voice sharp. Ethan ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "It just happened. Vanessa was new at the firm. We started working late hours together. Jenna was so focused on the pregnancy, always talking about the baby, making plans. So while my sister was preparing to bring your child into the world," Lena cut in, her voice dripping with contempt, "you were sleeping with a colleague because you felt neglected. And you told this woman the baby wasn't yours?" "You could say that." Ethan had no response. The magnitude of his betrayal, laid bare in Lena's succinct summary, seemed to finally hit him. It wasn't just guilt that crept into his face. It was the dawning horror of knowing he'd crossed a line he could never uncross. "I need to make this right," he said weakly. "You can't," Lena said flatly. Her voice held no pity, only steel. "Some things can't be fixed with an apology. The best thing you can do right now is leave. Jenna doesn't need the stress of seeing you when she wakes up." "She's my wife," Ethan protested. "That's my daughter." "You should have remembered that before you started sleeping with Vanessa," Lena replied. "Before you stood by while she assaulted your pregnant wife. Before you and your friends laughed while Jenna collapsed." Each word hit like a slap, not just because it was true, but because he'd done nothing to stop it. Ethan flinched at each accusation. "I didn't laugh," he mumbled. But even as he said it, the image of him frozen, doing nothing while Jenna bled, replayed in his mind. "No, you just did nothing," which is worse. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. The truth was heavy enough. Lena checked her phone, which had been continuously buzzing. "I'm going to check on my sister. You should know the video is already circulating. Monica has connections at several news outlets, and they're very interested in the story of an investment banker whose mistress attacked his pregnant wife at her birthday party, triggering premature labor." Ethan's head snapped up. The panic in his eyes flared before he could hide it. "You can't release that video. It could ruin my career." Lena's laugh was without humor. It was sharp, bitter, the kind of laugh that didn't come from amusement but disbelief. "Your career? My sister almost died tonight. Your daughter is fighting for breath in the NICU, and you're worried about your job?" She took a step closer, lowering her voice to a cold whisper. "Everything you care about is slipping through your fingers, and you still don't get it." Without waiting for his response, Lena walked away, leaving Ethan alone, with the consequences of his actions beginning to unfold around him. The hallway felt colder now, the buzz of his phone louder, the silence of his own failure deafening. The intensive care unit was eerily quiet, except for the steady beeping of monitors. Jenna lay unconscious, her skin almost as white as the hospital sheets, multiple IVs running into her arms. Lena sat beside her, holding her sister's limp hand while scrolling through her phone with her free hand. The video had indeed gone viral, and the internet showed no mercy. In just 3 hours, it had been shared thousands of times across multiple social media platforms. News sites were picking up the story, with headlines like, "Banker's mistress attacks pregnant wife, triggers emergency birth." "Cake assault leads to medical crisis, husband stood by." Ethan's firm, Barclay and Walsh, was tagged in hundreds of posts, with people demanding to know whether they condone such behavior from their employees. The firm's polished PR image was crumbling under public outrage. Vanessa's identity had been quickly uncovered by internet sleuths who recognized her from the firm's website. Her social media accounts were being flooded with outraged comments. People were screenshotting her LinkedIn, resharing old Instagram captions about confidence and integrity with brutal sarcasm. Lena felt a grim satisfaction at the swift public response. Not because it would fix anything, but because, for once, justice didn't wait. While she hadn't personally sent the video to news outlets, Lena hadn't stopped Monica from doing so. Jenna would need all the support she could get in the coming days, and the court of public opinion was firmly on her side. A soft moan drew Lena's attention back to her sister. Jenna's eyelids fluttered, then slowly opened. "Lena," her voice was barely audible. "I'm here," Lena assured her immediately, setting down her phone. "You're okay. You're in the hospital." Jenna's hand weakly moved to her stomach, now conspicuously flat beneath the hospital sheet. Panic flashed in her eyes. "The baby," she whispered urgently. "She's in the NICU," Lena said calmly. 5 pounds, 3 ounces. Mom and Dad are with her right now. She needs some help breathing, but the doctors say she's strong." Relief washed over Jenna's face, followed quickly by the return of awareness, the events that had led to her hospitalization. Tears filled her eyes. "It wasn't a nightmare, was it?" she asked. "Ethan, Vanessa, they were real?" Lena squeezed her sister's hand. "I'm so sorry, Jenna." Jenna turned her face away, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "Everyone was laughing," she said, her voice breaking. "My husband's mistress threw cake at me, and people laughed." "Not everyone," Lena corrected gently, "and those who did? They're facing serious consequences now." Jenna looked back at her, confusion evident through her tears. "What do you mean?" Lena hesitated, unsure if now was the time to explain about the viral video and the public outcry. Before she could decide, a nurse entered the room. "She's awake," the nurse observed with a warm smile. "That's wonderful. How are you feeling, Jenna?" "Like I've been hit by a truck," Jenna admitted weakly. "That's to be expected after what you've been through. Your doctor will be in shortly to explain everything. In the meantime, there's someone who would like to meet her mama, if you're feeling up to it." As the nurse spoke, another staff member wheeled in a clear bassinet containing a tiny bundle wrapped in a pink blanket. Despite her exhaustion and pain, Jenna immediately tried to sit up. "Careful," the nurse cautioned, adjusting the bed to a slight incline. "You have a fresh incision to protect." With practiced efficiency, the nurse lifted the tiny baby from the bassinet and gently placed her on Jenna's chest, arranging the tubes and wires that connected the newborn to a portable monitor. "She still needs oxygen support," the nurse explained, "so she can only stay for a few minutes. But skin-to-skin contact is beneficial for both of you." Jenna gazed down at her daughter's face, in wonder. Despite the trauma of her birth, despite the betrayal that had preceded it, the connection was immediate and overwhelming. The baby's eyes were closed, her tiny features perfect in miniature, a cap of dark hair peeking out from under the hospital beanie. "Hello, little one," Jenna whispered, her tears now falling for an entirely different reason. "I'm your mom." Lena watched the moment with a lump in her throat. In the midst of catastrophe, this small miracle somehow made everything else recede in importance. "Have you thought of a name?" the nurse asked, checking the baby's monitors. Jenna nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving her daughter's face. "Sophia," she said softly. "It means wisdom." As Jenna bonded with her newborn daughter, Ethan was facing a very different kind of reality in the hospital parking lot. His phone had been exploding with notifications, calls from his boss, texts from colleagues, emails from clients who had seen the video. His parents had left 3 voicemails, each more distressed than the last. Vanessa had finally returned his calls, but only to inform him that she had been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation by the firm's HR department. She blamed him entirely, claiming he had misled her about the state of his marriage. "You told me she knew we were seeing each other," Vanessa had sobbed into the phone. "You said you were separated, in all but name. Now I'm being called a homewrecker and getting death threats online." Ethan had no comfort to offer her. The magnitude of what they had done, what he had done, was finally sinking in. He had betrayed his pregnant wife, lied to his mistress about the state of his marriage, and when the moment of truth arrived, he had stood frozen, protecting neither woman. His phone rang again. It was his boss. With resignation, Ethan answered. "Ethan, I need you in my office tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. sharp," the senior partner said without preamble. "The executive committee is convening an emergency meeting regarding your situation." "I understand," Ethan replied numbly. "I've been fielding calls from clients all evening," his boss continued, the anger in his voice unmistakable. "The firm's reputation is taking a hit every time that video gets shared." "I'm sorry," Ethan offered, inadequately. "Save it for tomorrow," his boss snapped, then hung up. Ethan sat in his car, the enormity of the collapsing life he had built weighing on him. He had jeopardized his marriage, his relationship with his newborn daughter, his professional reputation, and the standing of his firm, all for an affair that had begun as a flattering distraction and evolved into an addiction to the excitement and novelty Vanessa represented. What had started with flirtation in late-night emails and glances across boardroom tables had become a secret life, one that fed his ego while poisoning everything else. As the hospital lights reflected on his windshield, Ethan made a decision. He would fight to make things right. He would beg Jenna's forgiveness, promise to be a better man, a devoted father. He rehearsed the words in his mind like a prayer. "I'll change. I'll do better. I'll fix this." But even as he imagined saying them, a hollow ache in his chest reminded him they might never be enough. Surely, once the initial shock wore off, she would see that breaking up their family wasn't the answer. They had a history. A child. That had to count for something. Didn't it? With this resolution firming his spine, Ethan finally drove home, to the empty house he had once shared with Jenna, unaware that the damage he had caused was far too extensive for simple apologies to repair. By morning, what had begun as a viral video had transformed into a full-blown social media firestorm. And it wasn't just Jenna's friends sharing it now. It had leapt into national conversation, fueled by outrage, empathy, and fury. The hashtag Justice for Jenna was trending nationally, with people from all walks of life expressing outrage at the treatment of a pregnant woman by her husband, his mistress, and the laughing bystanders. News vans had gathered outside St. Thomas Medical Center, though security was keeping reporters at bay. Camera flashes flared at every ambulance arrival. Commentators speculated about ethics, infidelity, and violence in relationships. Jenna had become a symbol, one she never asked to be. Ethan's investment firm, Barclay and Walsh, had issued a terse statement saying they were investigating the matter internally and did not condone the behavior depicted in the video. Several of Ethan's clients had publicly announced they were taking their business elsewhere, unwilling to be associated with someone whose personal conduct was so clearly at odds with their corporate values. The firm's PR department scrambled while Ethan's name trended, not for his portfolio wins, but for standing motionless while a cake exploded across his pregnant wife's chest. Meanwhile, in the hospital's NICU, Jenna sat in a wheelchair beside her daughter's incubator. A very different kind of media playing out on the small television mounted on the wall. A local news anchor was discussing the incident with barely concealed disgust. Sources close to the family say that both mother and baby are in stable condition this morning, the anchor reported. After the stress-induced premature delivery, the husband, identified as Ethan Caldwell, a senior investment manager at Barclay and Walsh, has not issued any statement regarding the incident. The anchor's tone lingered on, "not issued any statement," making the silence sound like a second betrayal. Jenna's mother reached for the remote and muted the television. "You don't need to listen to this right now, sweetheart." Jenna's eyes remained fixed on her daughter, who was breathing easier that morning, according to the doctors. Her tiny chest rose and fell inside the incubator like a fragile promise, one Jenna had to keep. "It's okay, Mom," she said softly. "It doesn't matter anymore." But her voice wavered slightly, as if part of her still wished it did. Her father, who had been standing protectively near the door, scoffed. "Doesn't matter? That man humiliated you in front of everyone. You know his girlfriend assaulted you. They endangered my granddaughter's life." "It absolutely matters." Jenna finally looked up, her expression calm despite the lingering pallor of her skin. "I mean, the media coverage doesn't matter. What matters is right here." She gently stroked her finger against Sophia's tiny hand, which reflexively gripped it. "Everything else is just noise." Her parents exchanged concerned glances. Their daughter's composure seemed almost unnatural, given the circumstances. The obstetrician had warned them that Jenna might experience emotional numbness as a protective mechanism against trauma. Lena entered the NICU, having just returned from Jenna's house with fresh clothes and toiletries. "Security stopped me on the way in," she reported. "Ethan's trying to get in to see you and the baby. They're keeping him in the lobby for now." Jenna's calm facade cracked slightly. "I don't want to see him," she said quietly. "You don't have to." Her father assured her, "I'll handle it." As he turned to leave, Jenna called after him. "Dad, no scenes, please. I just want him to go away." Her father nodded reluctantly, then went to intercept his son-in-law in the hospital lobby. Ethan sat stiffly on an uncomfortable plastic chair, a small teddy bear clutched in his hands. He had come directly from his morning meeting at the firm, where he had been placed on indefinite leave pending a full investigation. His colleagues had averted their eyes as he cleaned out his desk. No one wanted to be associated with the man whose face was being vilified across social media. When he saw Jenna's father approaching, Ethan stood quickly, hope flashing across his haggard features. "Thomas, thank you for coming down. I need to see Jenna and the baby." "I've been trying to..." Thomas held up a hand. "Jenna doesn't want to see you. Not now, maybe not ever." Ethan's face fell. "She can't keep me from my daughter." "Your daughter?" Thomas's voice rose dangerously, drawing glances from nearby visitors. He made a visible effort to control himself. "The daughter you told your girlfriend wasn't yours? The one who was born a month early because of your actions?" "I made a terrible mistake," Ethan admitted, his eyes pleading. "Many mistakes. But I love Jenna. I love our baby. I want to make things right." Thomas regarded his son-in-law with cold assessment. "Ethan, I've known you for 7 years. I welcomed you into our family. I trusted you with my daughter's happiness, and now I see I never really knew you at all." "People make mistakes," Ethan insisted. "Jenna and I can work through this." "This wasn't a mistake." Thomas's voice was calm but cutting. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or saying something thoughtless in anger. You carried on an affair for months, lied about your child's paternity, and stood by while your pregnant wife was publicly humiliated and went into premature labor. Those are choices, Ethan. Deliberate choices. Choices that reveal your character. Ethan had no response to this stark assessment. Thomas continued, his voice lowering. Jenna has instructed the hospital that you're not permitted in her room. She's also contacted her lawyer. I suggest you do the same. Her lawyer? Ethan echoed, stunned. It's been less than 24 hours. Thomas pointed out, and in those hours she almost died, bringing your child into the world. Perhaps that has clarified her thinking about what she deserves in life. It certainly has, for me. With that, Thomas turned and walked back toward the elevators, leaving Ethan clutching the small teddy bear in the lobby, surrounded by strangers stealing curious glances at the man they recognized from the viral video. Jenna stood at the window of her hospital room, watching as Lena pulled the car around to the front entrance. After a week of recovery for both mother and daughter, they were finally being discharged. Sophia, though still smaller than average, had demonstrated remarkable resilience, quickly graduating from oxygen support to breathing on her own. The physical wounds from Jenna's emergency C-section were healing well, according to her doctors. The emotional wounds would take longer, but Jenna had surprised everyone, especially herself, with her clarity and resolve. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Jenna turned, expecting a nurse with discharge papers, but instead found Monica, her closest friend from college. "Ready for the great escape?" Monica asked, entering with a large gift bag. Jenna smiled, genuine warmth breaking through her reserved expression. "More than ready. Hospital food is everything they say it is." Monica set the bag down and embraced her friend carefully, mindful of her healing incision. "How are you really doing?" she asked, studying Jenna's face. Jenna sighed, sitting on the edge of the neatly made hospital bed. "Physically, getting better every day. Emotionally, I'm still figuring that out. It's like I'm watching someone else's life implode, except occasionally I remember it's mine." Monica nodded sympathetically. "That's a normal trauma response. Your brain is protecting you while you process everything," Monica said gently. Her voice was calm, but her eyes held that worried softness reserved only for someone who's watched a loved one break and slowly rebuild. "The therapist they sent said the same thing," Jenna acknowledged. "She also said it's okay to not have all the answers right now." Her voice was steady, but there was a flicker beneath, the weight of everything she hadn't yet said out loud. "Wise woman." Monica approved. "So what happens next?" "Mom and Dad want me to stay with them for a while, but I said no. I need to stand on my own 2 feet, figure out who I am now." She paused, as if hearing the words for the first time herself. The version of Jenna that had once relied on Ethan's protection no longer existed. Jenna's eyes drifted to the bassinet, where Sophia slept peacefully. The rise and fall of her daughter's tiny chest steadied her, a reminder that healing didn't have to be loud to be powerful. Besides, their place is full of stairs, which isn't ideal with a newborn and a C-section. She tried to smile, but the fatigue beneath it was unmistakable. "Where will you go?" "Home for now. Ethan moved most of his things out yesterday. According to Lena, he's staying at a hotel while we—" Jenna hesitated over the word. "Separate." Monica raised an eyebrow. "Just separating?" It wasn't judgment, it was knowing. The kind that came from watching too many friends give second chances to men who didn't deserve first ones. Jenna's gaze hardened slightly. "For now. My lawyer advised me to take things one step at a time. First priority was getting a temporary order of protection based on Vanessa's assault. Second was securing interim financial support for Sophia and me while I'm on maternity leave. Divorce is step 3. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It was measured. Not with hesitation, but with clarity. "So you've decided then?" Jenna nodded slowly. "I keep thinking about that moment when Vanessa was throwing accusations, and Ethan just stood there. He didn't deny anything, didn't defend me, didn't even try to stop her from throwing the cake. If he couldn't protect me, then how could I ever trust him to protect Sophia?" The memory still burned, not because of what Vanessa had said, but because of Ethan's silence. His stillness had spoken louder than betrayal ever could. Monica squeezed her friend's hand. "You're making the right choice, and you're not alone in this." Her grip was firm, grounding, the kind of support that said, "Even if you fall, I'll be here to catch you." Speaking of which, she reached for the gift bag she had brought. "This is from everyone at the office. We took up a collection." Jenna opened the bag to find a portable bassinet, several packages of newborn diapers, and an envelope. Inside the envelope was a card signed by dozens of her colleagues and a substantial gift card to a baby supply store. Each signature felt like a thread in a net she hadn't realized had been there all along. Tears filled Jenna's eyes. "This is so generous." "That's not all," Monica continued. "The partners have extended your maternity leave to 16 weeks, fully paid. They said to take all the time you need." Jenna was momentarily speechless. "I don't know what to say." "Say your friends help you," Monica suggested gently. "You've always been the strong one, the one who has everything under control. But even the strongest people need support sometimes." Monica's tone shifted, almost pleading, a reminder that love doesn't always roar, sometimes it just shows up. Before Jenna could respond, a nurse entered, wheeling a small cart. "Ready to go home, Mom?" she asked with a cheerful smile. She asked cheerfully, "Just need your signature on these discharge papers, and you and little Sophia are free to go." As Jenna signed the paperwork, Lena appeared in the doorway with a car seat. "Chariot awaits, my lady," she announced with a dramatic bow. For the first time in what felt like ages, Jenna laughed, a genuine, spontaneous sound that seemed to surprise even her. It was a small moment of lightness in what had been the darkest week of her life, a reminder that joy could still exist alongside pain. Outside the hospital, a few persistent reporters lingered, hoping for a glimpse of the woman whose story had captivated the public imagination. Hospital security formed a protective barrier as Lena brought the car around, shielding Jenna and the baby from prying eyes and cameras. As they drove away from St. Thomas Medical Center, Jenna gazed out the window at the city passing by. The world looked different somehow. The colors sharper, the contrast more defined, or perhaps it was Jenna herself who had changed, her perception altered by the seismic shifts in her life. "You okay?" Lena asked, glancing at her sister in the rearview mirror. Jenna looked down at Sophia, sleeping peacefully in her car seat, then back up at the road ahead. "I will be," she answered, and was surprised to discover she actually believed it. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan sat in the office of Barclay and Walsh's HR director, a stern woman named Vivian Grant, who had been with the firm for 20 years. Beside her sat Charles Walsh himself, the firm's founding partner, his expression grave. "The executive committee has concluded its review of the situation," Vivian stated formally. "Due to the serious nature of the allegations and the negative publicity affecting our client relationships, we have no choice but to terminate your employment, effective immediately." Ethan had been expecting this, but the reality still hit like a physical blow. "I understand," he managed. "Your actions reflect poorly on this firm," Walsh added, his disapproval evident. "We've lost 3 major clients in the past week. Our reputation for discretion and integrity has been compromised." "What about Vanessa?" Ethan asked. "Is she being terminated as well?" Vivian's lips thinned. "Miss Roberts resigned yesterday. That matter is closed." Ethan nodded, unsurprised. Vanessa had made it clear that she wanted nothing more to do with him or the situation. Her last text had been blunt: "My life is ruined because of you. Never contact me again." "You'll receive 2 weeks severance pay," Vivian continued. "Your personal effects have been packed and are waiting at reception. Due to the sensitivity of client information, you'll be escorted from the building immediately after this meeting." It was a stunning fall from grace. Just a week ago, Ethan had been on track to make partner within the next 2 years. Now he was being treated like a security risk, his career in shambles, his reputation destroyed. "Is there anything else you'd like to say?" Charles Walsh asked, his tone suggesting there was nothing Ethan could possibly say to improve the situation. Ethan considered for a moment. "I'd like to apologize for the harm I've caused the firm. My personal failures shouldn't have affected Barclay and Walsh's reputation." Walsh's expression didn't soften. "Perhaps you should have considered that before conducting an inappropriate workplace relationship and allowing it to become a public spectacle." The meeting concluded shortly after, and as promised, Ethan was escorted to the lobby by security. As he carried the box containing his office belongings to his car, he couldn't help noticing the sideways glances from former colleagues who hurried past without speaking. In the span of 1 week, Ethan had lost his wife, his home, his job, and his reputation. Even his parents had expressed their profound disappointment, his mother crying openly during their last phone call. The only thing he had left was his connection to Sophia, a daughter he had yet to meet, born in circumstances he could scarcely have imagined. As he drove away from the office building for the last time, Ethan was resolved that whatever else happened, he would fight to be a father to his child. It was the one relationship he still had a chance to build properly. From the beginning, what Ethan didn't yet understand was that rebuilding any part of his life would require confronting the fundamental character flaws that had led him to this point, a process that would be more difficult and painful than losing his external markers of success. 2 weeks after returning home from the hospital, Jenna sat in the elegant office of Diana Winters, widely regarded as one of the city's most formidable divorce attorneys. Sophia slept peacefully in her carrier beside Jenna's chair, oblivious to the serious discussion that would shape her future. "Let's be clear about your priorities," Diana said, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun that matched her no-nonsense demeanor. "What matters most to you in this divorce?" Jenna had given this considerable thought. "Financial security for Sophia and me. Primary physical custody, with appropriate visitation for Ethan." "I won't keep him from his daughter," Jenna said, "but I need to be the one making day-to-day decisions, and I want the house. I designed every inch of that nursery. I can't bear the thought of leaving it." Her voice wavered slightly, not from uncertainty, but from the ache of seeing her dream home now laced with ghosts of betrayal. Diana nodded approvingly. "All reasonable requests. Given the circumstances of your separation and the evidence we have, I believe we're in a strong position to negotiate favorable terms." Her tone was calm but firm, the kind of confidence Jenna had learned to lean on in recent days. "By evidence, you mean the video?" Jenna clarified, her expression tightening. She hated that her most humiliating moment had become the most powerful piece of leverage. "Precisely. While New York is a no-fault divorce state, meaning we don't have to prove misconduct to obtain a divorce, evidence of adultery and the incident at your birthday can certainly influence the court regarding property division and potentially custody arrangements." Her words were clinical, but the subtext was sharp. The law might not punish betrayal, but it could still weigh it. Jenna shifted uncomfortably. "I hate that my humiliation has become leverage." The image of frosting dripping down her face in front of dozens of people still made her stomach twist. Diana's professional demeanor softened slightly. "I understand. But remember, you didn't create this situation. Your husband made choices that led to these consequences. We're simply ensuring those consequences don't include financial hardship for you and your daughter." She paused, letting the words land. "You're not taking revenge, Jenna. You're protecting a future." Sophia stirred in her carrier, making tiny sounds that Jenna had already learned to recognize as the precursors to hunger. With practiced movements, she lifted her daughter and prepared to nurse her. The simple ritual grounded her, a quiet moment of motherhood amid the chaos of legal strategy. "Is this okay?" she asked the attorney. "Of course," Diana assured her. "I have 3 children of my own. Now, let's discuss our next steps. Have you and Ethan communicated directly since you left the hospital?" Jenna shook her head as she settled Sophia against her breast. "Only through Lena or my parents. He sent several texts asking to see the baby, but I've told him I want all communication to go through our lawyers for now." Her voice had no venom, just boundaries, newly built and fiercely guarded. "That's wise," Diana approved. "The restraining order against Vanessa remains in place?" "Yes, though I haven't seen or heard from her since that night. According to Lena's sources, she moved back to Chicago to live with her parents after resigning from the firm." The name still felt like glass in her mouth. Vanessa had vanished, but her damage remained. Diana made a note in her file. "Good. One less complication. Now Ethan has retained counsel. Gerald Hoffman, a respected family law attorney I've faced many times. He's requested a preliminary meeting to discuss temporary arrangements while the divorce proceeds." Jenna nodded gently, stroking Sophia's cheek as she nursed. The baby's skin was impossibly soft, a reminder of all that still needed protecting. "When?" "Next week, if you're feeling up to it. You wouldn't need to see Ethan. This would be a meeting between attorneys, with our respective clients in separate rooms. That's fine, Jenna agreed. The sooner we establish some clear boundaries, the better. And this time she intended to enforce them. Diana studied her client with professional assessment. Jenna Caldwell presented a compelling figure. A new mother still physically recovering from a traumatic birth, yet demonstrating remarkable composure and clarity. If they did end up in court, a judge would likely be sympathetic to her situation, especially with the viral video providing such damning evidence of her husband's betrayal. There's one more thing we should discuss, Diana said carefully. The public nature of your situation. The video has received millions of views. You've been approached for interviews. I understand, Jenna nodded reluctantly. Several news outlets, 2 talk shows, and a documentary filmmaker. I've declined them all. That's probably wise during pending litigation, Diana agreed. However, you should be prepared for continued public interest. Ethan's attorney may argue that the viral nature of the video has unduly prejudiced public opinion against his client. The video only shows what actually happened, Jenna pointed out. I didn't create or distribute it. True, Diana said, but perception matters in these cases. We need to be prepared to counter any argument that Ethan's being unfairly villainized. Jenna laughed, humorless. He villainized himself when he stood by and watched his mistress assault his pregnant wife. Diana's thin smile acknowledged the point. Indeed, we'll plan to meet again before next week's preliminary discussion. In the meantime, continue documenting any communication from Ethan, and call me immediately if Vanessa attempts to contact you in violation of the restraining order. As Jenna gathered her things to leave, Diana offered a final observation. You know, many clients in your position are still in shock at this stage. Angry, vengeful, or completely overwhelmed. You seem remarkably focused. Jenna glanced down at Sophia, now asleep against her shoulder. I don't have the luxury of falling apart. Every decision I make now affects her future. She met the attorney's gaze directly. Besides, I wasted enough tears on Ethan in the hospital. I'm done crying over someone who could hurt me so deliberately. Diana nodded approvingly. Channel that clarity. It will serve you well in the months ahead. Across town, Ethan sat in a considerably less imposing office, facing his own attorney. Gerald Hoffman was in his 60s, with the patient demeanor of someone who had seen every possible manifestation of marital discord over his 40-year career. The preliminary meeting is set for next Wednesday, Gerald informed him. Diana Winters is tough but fair. She'll come in with specific demands regarding temporary support and custody arrangements while the divorce proceeds. He adjusted his glasses as he spoke, his tone professional, but with an edge that suggested even he knew this wouldn't be an easy negotiation. Ethan leaned forward anxiously. Will Jenna be there? I need to talk to her. Make her understand that. His voice cracked slightly, the desperation bleeding through despite his best efforts to sound composed. Gerald held up a hand. No, you won't see Jenna. This is a meeting between attorneys with clients in separate rooms, specifically to avoid direct confrontation at this emotional stage. And Ethan, I have to be frank with you. Your position is not strong. He didn't sugarcoat it. There wasn't time for illusions anymore. Ethan's shoulders slumped. Because of the video? Partially, yes. The video presents compelling evidence of both infidelity and behavior that endangered your wife and child. But more broadly, your actions have created a narrative that's difficult to counter. Gerald leaned in, speaking more quietly now. You didn't just cheat. You allowed chaos to unfold around a pregnant woman you swore to protect in front of an audience. And the internet never forgets. You conducted an affair while your wife was pregnant. Your mistress publicly humiliated her, triggering early labor. You've lost your job as a result. These facts don't position you favorably for custody negotiations. Each word landed like a blow. Ethan winced, but he didn't argue. He couldn't. Ethan ran his hands through his hair in agitation, the same hands that once built a nursery crib, now clenched with regret. So what do? We present you as contrite, responsible, and focused on being a good father moving forward. We acknowledge past mistakes without continuing to dwell on them. We emphasize your commitment to co-parenting effectively despite the marriage's end. You're not here to reclaim a marriage, Gerald added firmly. You're here to protect whatever relationship you can still salvage with your child. But I don't want the marriage to end, Ethan insisted. I made a terrible mistake. I want another chance. His voice cracked again, this time not from panic but genuine remorse, raw and heavy. Gerald's expression was sympathetic but firm. Ethan, you need to accept reality. Jenna has filed for divorce. Given what's transpired, reconciliation is extremely unlikely. Our focus now is on securing reasonable custody arrangements and fair financial terms. He paused before adding, and how you handle this stage, right now, will determine how much you lose. Ethan slumped back in his chair, the finality of the situation sinking in. The weight of consequence pressed down harder than any courtroom judgment. I haven't even met my daughter yet, he said quietly. His voice barely rose above a whisper, like the thought alone drained the last of his resolve. That's something we'll address at the preliminary meeting, Gerald assured him. A father has rights to access his child, barring evidence that he presents a danger. Despite everything, there's no suggestion you would harm your daughter. He looked directly at Ethan. But rights don't erase consequences. Keep that in mind. Of course I wouldn't, Ethan replied, horrified at the mere suggestion. Tears prickled at the corners of his eyes, not for what he had lost, but for what he had never even held. Then we'll secure visitation rights, possibly supervised at first, but progressing to more standard arrangements. Gerald closed his file, the meeting done, but for Ethan, the reckoning had only just begun. As you demonstrate responsible parenting, Gerald consulted his notes. Now, regarding finances, you're currently unemployed, correct? Ethan nodded glumly. I have some interviews lined up, but firms in my sector are hesitant because of the publicity. That complicates support calculations, Gerald mused. We need to argue that any temporary support order should be based on your realistic earning capacity in the current circumstances, not your previous salary. I'll pay whatever I need to for Sophia, Ethan said quickly. I don't want Jenna to think I'm trying to shirk my responsibilities. Gerald noted this with approval. That's the right attitude. We'll aim for arrangements that are fair to all parties while you rebuild your career. As Ethan left his attorney's office, his phone buzzed with a text from his mother. Your father and I would like to meet our granddaughter. Any progress? Ethan sighed heavily as he typed his response, working on it. Meeting with lawyers next week. The truth was that Ethan had never felt more powerless in his adult life. His access to his own child depended on legal negotiations. His professional future was uncertain. Even his parents' relationship with their granddaughter hinged on his ability to navigate the consequences of his actions. For the first time, Ethan was beginning to understand that some mistakes couldn't be fixed with charm, money, or promises to do better. Some betrayals permanently altered the landscape of trust and respect, in ways that no apology could restore. As he walked to his car, Ethan passed a young couple pushing a stroller, the father's arm protectively around the mother's shoulders. The simple family scene, one he had once taken for granted as inevitable in his future, now seemed like an impossible dream. The weight of what he had lost, through his own choices, settled over him like a physical burden. The law offices of Winters and Associates occupied the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise with sweeping views of the city. In a conference room at the east end of the floor, Diana Winters and Gerald Hoffman sat across from each other, surrounded by legal pads and documents. Their clients waited in separate rooms, Jenna in Diana's office, with Lena keeping her company, Ethan in a smaller conference room, accompanied by his father. Let's begin with the most pressing matters, Diana suggested, her tone businesslike. Temporary custody and support. While the divorce proceeds, Gerald nodded. My client is requesting regular visitation with his daughter. He proposes initially supervised visits, progressing to unsupervised day visits as appropriate. Diana consulted her notes. My client is amenable to supervised visitation, twice weekly for 2 hours, to take place at Jenna's home with her sister present as the supervisor. That's quite restrictive, Gerald observed. Ethan is Sophia's father. There's no allegation he would harm the child. There is, however, significant evidence that he exercised poor judgment that endangered both mother and child, Diana countered smoothly. Jenna's priority is establishing a stable routine for a newborn who has already experienced medical challenges. Mr. Caldwell has yet to demonstrate his commitment to Sophia's well-being. Gerald frowned. How can he demonstrate commitment if he's barely allowed to see his child? By accepting initially conservative arrangements and building from there, Diana replied. This is a temporary agreement while the divorce proceeds, not the final custody determination. If your client demonstrates reliability and good judgment during supervised visits, we can revisit the terms in 60 days. Gerald made a note. I'll discuss it with my client. He moved on to the next issue. Regarding temporary support, we need to address Mr. Caldwell's current employment situation. Indeed, Diana acknowledged. While Mr. Caldwell's actions resulted in his termination, my client recognizes that it's in Sophia's best interest for her father to rebuild his career. We propose temporary support based on 75% of his previous salary for a period of 3 months, after which we would reassess based on his employment status at that time. Gerald raised his eyebrows. That's more reasonable than I expected. Diana's smile was thin. Miss Caldwell is focused on long-term stability, not short-term punishment. She recognizes that her daughter benefits from having a financially secure father. The negotiations continued for nearly 2 hours, covering access to the family home. Ethan would retrieve personal items by appointment only. Medical decisions for Sophia. Joint legal custody, with Jenna having tie-breaking authority. Interim financial arrangements, covering household expenses during the separation. Finally, Diana gathered her papers. I believe we've reached preliminary agreement on all essential matters. I'll draft the temporary arrangement for your review and, pending client approval, we can proceed with formal divorce filings next month, Gerald concluded. My client still hopes for reconciliation, he added, but understands we need to establish these temporary arrangements regardless. His tone was calm, but the hope in his words sounded less like confidence and more like a man reciting a line he no longer believed. Diana's expression revealed nothing, though she doubted Jenna had any interest in reconciliation. She had seen this before, the husband hoping the legal process might be slow enough to turn back time. It never was. I'll convey that to my client. In the meantime, shall we inform them of our progress? In Diana's office, Jenna sat stiffly on a leather sofa, trying to focus on Sophia sleeping in her carrier, rather than the anxiety churning in her stomach. The baby's slow, rhythmic breaths were the only thing keeping her grounded, as legal documents shaped her new life behind closed doors. Lena scrolled through her phone beside her, occasionally sharing social media updates to distract her sister. Apparently, Vanessa closed all her social media accounts, Lena reported. Her voice was tinged with satisfaction, though she didn't smile. Smart move, considering the death threats. Jenna winced. I don't condone that. As much as I hate what she did, threatening violence isn't the answer. Her words were soft but firm, a quiet reminder that dignity didn't have to disappear just because trust had. You're a better person than me, Lena muttered. I'd be fine with her experiencing some consequences. She didn't look up from her phone, but her jaw was tight. Her loyalty burned hotter than her anger. She lost her job and had to move back home with her parents, Jenna pointed out. Those are consequences. Besides, Ethan is the one who made vows to me, not Vanessa. There was no bitterness in her tone, only clarity. The betrayal that hurt the most always came from those closest to you. The door opened, and Diana entered with a satisfied expression that immediately eased some of Jenna's tension. The shift in Diana's posture, shoulders relaxed, chin slightly lifted, was the first real signal that something had gone in their favor. We've reached preliminary agreements on all key points, Diana announced. Mr. Hoffman will be discussing them with Ethan, but I believe the terms are quite favorable. She proceeded to outline the visitation schedule, support arrangements, and other details they had negotiated. Each bullet point felt less like legalese and more like reclaimed territory, pieces of Jenna's future being defined by her terms. Jenna listened carefully, nodding as each point was explained. No more silence. No more waiting. Every line in that agreement was a small, hard-won act of survival. So dear friend, sometimes life doesn't shatter in one loud, devastating moment. It unravels quietly, thread by thread, until one day you're sitting across from a lawyer, negotiating the terms of a life you never imagined you'd have to rebuild. Jenna didn't choose the betrayal. She didn't ask to become a symbol or to be forced into survival mode. But when the moment came, she did what the Stoics have long taught us. She faced the truth, not with rage, but with reason. She didn't try to control what had already broken. Instead, she focused on what she could control: her dignity, her child's safety, her future. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Jenna revoked the power of betrayal to define her. And maybe you can too. We don't always get justice in the way we expect, but we do get the chance to choose how we respond. We get the chance to stand up, not just in anger, but in quiet strength. One boundary, one breath, one document at a time. This isn't just about divorce or drama. It's about reclaiming your voice when the world tries to silence it. So if you're walking through your own fire, remember this: healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to let the pain become your identity. You've got this. And if you don't feel like you do today, come back tomorrow. We'll be here. Keep walking forward, even when it hurts. If this story moved you, helped you reflect, or reminded you of someone who needs to hear it, like this video, share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that speak to the strength inside you. We'll get through this together.